Skanagoaga. My name is James Wilson. I'm from Six Nations of the Grand River. I am a graduate of Humber College of the Social Service Working Program. I'm also a singer-songwriter musician, and I'm currently in school at Laurier University, continuing my studies in social working.
My name is Marissa Grew. I'm a fashion management student here at Humber. I'm from Segma Anishinabek. I'm a designer, artist, and mother.
Hi, my name is Nigani, and I'm from Tikmikshi Anishinabek. I graduated from the Media Communications program at Humber College, and I'm currently a digital storyteller. So, I think stories that need to be told or aren't being told today are kind of stories that don't pertain to the trauma Indigenous people have experienced. When we talk about Indigenous people, like the main thing that comes up about Indigenous people is like residential school.
Yeah.
And I think when we talk about those things, like they're important, but I think we're missing out on a lot of like worldly experiences that Indigenous people also have. Like we enjoy Star Wars, or we enjoy like fashionable clothes. I think those kinds of things are missed when we only focus on the bad things.
I feel like it kind of like dampens our growth, I guess, like kind of holds us back. Like if we're always focusing on that, I feel like we have to kind of like revamp ourselves as artists to like grow further past that, just to help people get past that as well. Like I know it's important to talk about those things, but as a person, as individuals, like I think growing past that as well, but holding that a little bit to help you grow better into a person helps.
I agree. I think there's like a space for everything, you know, and there's a space for that conversation.
Yeah.
And stuff, but I know personally, like for music, like I'm most of my performances are at events that retain around like missing murder, Indigenous women, or residential schools, you know, and it's like, it's almost like the Indigenous culture is like defined by that, like, you know, and it's like there's so much more beauty that goes missed, you know, through just like constantly telling that same story, right? Like we have to almost like go back and revisit the beauty, revisit the language, revisit the traditions, and like really embrace that. You know?
I think like when we focus on those things, it kind of like traps us.
Yeah.
Because then that almost makes us the only like the only thing that, or that like residential school traumatic events, the only thing people want to talk about.
Yeah.
Whereas like there's so many other things that can be touched upon.
It's like we're on a truck and we're all trying to get past like a certain thing, but we keep on stalling. And it's like we're not really growing if we're gonna keep on stalling. We want to get to like better things to like make things better for ourselves and our communities. So even like in art, for instance, like you see the past like arts and it grows from different things each time. So like I don't really want my art to be stereotypical from people like, oh, you're Native, so your art's gonna be like this. I'm like, well, no, because I'm my own artist and I'm creating things differently. Like it's not always going to be the same as people will perceive it as it is right now, if that makes any sense.
I agree with that, because I know when I was like, in a sense, like I always believed like my art would be considered like Indigenous art just based on who I am. Like I'm an Indigenous person, which is not necessarily like, it's not necessarily a bad thing, but also when I think people view Indigenous art as only one thing, which I think like the whole like stalling part is like such a good metaphor for like Indigenous like I guess like external views of Indigenous people, you know what I mean?
Yeah. It's similar to like, say like you're at the same playing field as somebody that's non-Indigenous as an artist, right? And they go farther because they're not viewed as just Indigenous. You know, like sometimes Indigenous art people only get you for Indigenous events because they're like, oh, they only do this, they only do that, right? But you're so much more than that. You're like an individual in your art also.
Yeah.
right? So I found that too, where it's like I try to get performances like in Toronto at non-Indigenous events, but it's but like because I identify as an Indigenous artist, people immediately think like, oh, like he's not going to fit for this showcase because
Yeah.
Yeah.
that,
Or it's
right?
like they only want to show support certain times.
Yeah.
Not like for everything. Not like mainstream like events.
Yeah, one of my mentors told me that be very proud to be Indigenous, like with your art and everything like that, but be an artist that just so happens to be Indigenous. Don't be a straight up Indigenous artist for the reason that it will be like kind of pigeonholed, like
Yeah.
in that sense, right?
I feel like in those instances, like I've like eventually I feel like in the future it won't be such like it won't like hold us back. Like you know what I mean? Because I feel like in a set like in mainstream expression, like forms of expression, like there's such like a box that Indigenous people fit in. But I feel like as we go forward, like you were saying with evolution, like people evolve and our like everyone's ways of expression will be different in like 20 years. Like I feel like as we go forward and we continue to do what we do,
Yeah.
like those I guess like hurdles that we experience like won't be there anymore, and people will be able to just have art and be appreciated no matter what it is. Like you know what I mean? Next question. What stories have you been able to tell or wish to tell through your work?
Well, back to what we were saying before, like it's very like I want to learn more about my culture, like the good parts of my culture, so I can incorporate that. Like right now, I'm taking Mohawk language classes, so I can incorporate language into that, so I can influence the youth to want to learn the culture, want to like go to school to like learn the language and revitalize the culture, right? Because I feel like it is work to like learn, and it takes a lot of work to go to school, and I feel like especially for the influencing the youth, that's crucial, right? Because they're the next generation of Indigenous children that are coming up, right? So it's like it's important to have influence them in such a way where they really they're proud of their culture and they want nothing more but to like know about the history, know about the traditions and the language, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's like a vital part of like I feel like any form of like learning and like development is like being strongly rooted in like who you are as a person. So then you're able to move forward with like carrying your knowledge and carrying your culture and carrying your identity, because like your nation and like your territory will always be with you wherever you go, and they'll always be a vital part of your development, and like always remembering your ancestors and always remembering your family is like such a good thing to have.
Knowing where you came from is crucial, because I didn't realize that until I got older, that like people ask me like I identify myself not just by saying my name but saying who my grandparents are, saying who my parents are, because that lineage like is so crucial, you know?
I think that like even for myself, like learning all the techniques for my art and just like applying it to like other pieces that like I intend to do. So I just like the fact that when I learned all that, I will be able to tell people those things, like you said, like it's all part of like ancestors too, right? So you have those stories to keep on telling, so you're passing them on. So that's something that I enjoy doing. So it's all the art and the little techniques that I'm passing on that's kind of valuable to me.
Yeah. I feel like with art too, like in all arts, it's like you get this like never ending drive to like create something and to give something out, but you don't always know why that is within you, that want to do that. You know what I mean? And sometimes when you learn about your history, you learn about your ancestors, you find out why it is that you want something so bad, why you are driven so bad through this art. You know, I found that with my music. I didn't know that my family was into music, but I found that my family was traditional like Mohawk singers on the reserve, and they used to sing at all funerals, sing at all stuff, right? And I didn't know that until I asked like my grandparents, right? And they said that's where you got it from. That's where you got that drive, because like they were just like you know. And I think sometimes it's hard to understand why you want certain things and why you're doing, because like it motivates you when you find out, hey, I come from this line of people that they were just as passionate as I am.
That's like
Same.
super like beautiful in the sense of like relating that to how like your grandparents, like your family were all singers, because just like thinking about the work that you do now, like you're doing so much like workshops with youth where it's like taking care of each other, whereas in those instances going to funerals is like you're always making sure like those families are taken care of and they're okay. And it's kind of like that with your work with youth, like you're making sure that they also have proper tools to like be like okay and like express themselves. I think that's super cool.
I can speak from the same kind of view, just because like learning about my ancestors and my family, they're all like artists and they're travelers, so I always have that need to go somewhere and experience something different. And then that's somehow I'm always like incorporating in something in my life. So that's basically what my family is on my dad's side, and I get that a ton from them. And so when I learn more about it, I'm just like, that's so weird. Like everybody's an artist.
It just makes sense.
Everything makes sense.
You know, because so I know like with me, I was like, why do I want this so bad? Why do I want to be in music so bad? And like people would ask me like what's your goal in this? What's your goal? I was like, I really don't know. I'm just like really happy when I do it, you know? And like there's no like real like it's something internal. You know, and it's like I think reaching out to your family, reaching out to your bloodline, it kind of explains it for you.
And it just feels right.
It
just feels right.
And the funny thing is too, when like I would talk about something, like I want to go here and there, then all of a sudden like my grandma would like, oh really? Well, you know, like your cousin and your uncle went to like Germany and all these other places. You probably got that inside you somewhere. I'm like, really? Maybe. And then later, like I traveled like all over the world, and I'm just like, that's something that's really part of me. And I was always attracted to the art and culture in each place that I went. So I'm like always like exploring. So that's like kind of like inside me.
I've had that a couple times. Like my dad, on my dad's side, my dad's not Indigenous, but his dad was a musician, a touring country musician. And I never met him before, but I did this performance in Hamilton at a venue, right? And I told my dad where I was going at. He's like, your grandpa played here every single week. And right, and I didn't even know that, and I was getting gigs here all the time too. So I was like, oh, this is really weird. Like it's just like weird how you repeat things that your ancestors did, you know, without even knowing. Like
following in footsteps that like maybe not necessarily the exact same, but they were made for you like to walk in as well. I think that's like super cool.
I know. It's just guys like even when you think about it now, like I'll be telling my daughter these stories. Like she already sees them, but then she'll also be telling her kids too. Like, oh, grandma did this, and this is probably why I got this from her. Like this art, even art in general, that's been passed down to my kids too. So like they're always looking for stories like that and looking for things to be made by hand all the time. So like I see that in them. That's
what I always tell kids. It's like know where you came from. You know what I mean? Like ask questions. Like because like I don't think kids ask enough questions, especially to the elders. You know, because I found once I started doing that, I was like, it made me less worried about the future, because when you're a kid, you don't know where you're going. You don't know what's gonna happen, and when you talk to elders, they'll be like, everything's gonna be okay. We all like, you know how you just see a kid, you know they're gonna do good.
And then also when like you're a child, you're not like super worried about the future, because like every moment, I feel like this anyways, where it's like when you're a child, like all the moments that you have like are super special. But like you're not like hyper focused on like holding like onto it, whereas like when you get older, that's when that like
right after high school, it's like you're thrown into the fire.
You're like, I gotta remember all these things, and then like I think that's where it come like that whole holding on to like, or like preserving something to carry it on towards the future. Just like how museums hold on to like our old artifacts. Like those are also works of art. Like if you think about like birch bark canoes, like a lot of them are etched with like beautiful florals. Which leads me to my shoes. No, I'm just kidding. But I was just thinking, like, I kind of like the blending of like popular ways of expression. I guess. And like how our knowledge can also be like, there's also limitations to like what can be transferred into pop culture. But I think all of our beautiful things that, not that they lack meaning, but hold a certain beauty that should be like admired by many people and like brought forward, and like our old ways of dressing kind of thing, like like I always like to reference like bandolier bags or bandolier bags, however you pronounce it, but they're like super beautiful. And like I think about how those articles like should be worn, and like people should be able to see that like on people, and like be admired like in person kind of thing, not behind the piece, like not behind glass. But if we think about how delicate and fragile those pieces are, like you can't wear it every day, and like I wish I could. But when I think about like our shoes and like our t-shirts, like one of my cousins, like he like has like his art on t-shirts, and I'm like, wow, that's so cool, like the whole Baby Yoda. Like
I think that's the importance of knowing the stories behind the items too, right? Because say if you were wearing that like regalia or something like that, and somebody came up to you and said, what does that represent? What does it mean? I think it's important to know the stories behind it, you know what I mean, and not just wear it just because it looks trendy or cool, you know, like and I think that's a lot of pop culture like takes like indigenous art because they know it's beautiful, they see that it's beautiful, but they don't understand the actual beauty in the stories behind it, you know what I mean. And I think that's where a lot of misuse of the like the culture, like designs and this and that.
A lot of the people
abused.
are just not doing the research behind it to actually know those stories.
Or hiring like indigenous artists or like people who have those stories and like have enough knowledge to say this is what is appropriate to be used, or this is like we've had like people acknowledge that this is okay to be done. I think those kind of things need to be put in place in more companies. And like I think like N7, like for Nike, they're doing a pretty good job. And like I feel like in those aspects, I'm like, there are only so many like nations being represented though in like their designs. Well, there are over 400 nations in like on Turtle Island that like may not identify with those things, like with those designs in particular, which I think those items are beautiful, but I feel like there's a whole market, and like indigenous people aren't just one thing. There are so many.
That's one thing my mom told me too growing up. Like, Haudenosaunee culture is very different from Anishinaabe, because Anishinaabe there's a lot more symbolism in items, but Haudenosaunees are very, very simplistic with everything. Like they didn't have like teepees or something, you know, like Haudenosaunee people never, like they didn't have that. My mom told me a whole list of things that we use, like, you know, like we still wear the jewelry because it you identify as indigenous, and it's like you could just wear it, but that's like Ojibwe or something. It's not Mohawk, you know. There's certain, every nation has their own look, right? It's like and like those, it's like niche markets that like I feel like each like I guess like, or an organization or whatever, like whatever they do can like have like research people to do those kinds of like in-depth like knowledge searching. On my reserve there's a Youre Crafts. I don't know if you guys have been there before, but Youre Crafts, if you go in, they actually have all the jewelry that you could wear. It says like either Mohawk, Ojibwe, like what nation it's actually from, you know. And I love that, because like this is a piece of Mohawk jewelry. Like it actually said Mohawk, and it's my clan, right? And I got it at Youre Crafts a long time ago, but like everything. So, and that blew me away, because like even though I'm Turtle Clan, I don't buy jewelry that's Anishinaabe, like you know, I don't know. I think, and that's where the knowledge comes in, knowing what your people traditionally would wear, where that came from, you know?
I think that's really valuable, like just knowing about those nations, but it's also finding the right people that want to talk to you about them as well.
Yeah.
I just know that I've worked with like a store before, and they tried to like launch like, you know, Mohawk on the back of the bottom, and then there's like Ojibwe, then there's Haudenosaunee. That's how you say it. And then there's like Blackfoot, but like even having it here, like they had a hard time like launching it out because we're not all gathered in one place all the time. So Blackfoots are more like out west, and you know what I mean.
feel like in like certain aspects, I feel like that's why emphasizing and like encouraging people to like start, I guess like even it doesn't have to be just fashion, but like using artistic tools, or like, you know what I mean, finding like their gifts like that in order to like uplift their communities, their nations, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel like that's where like it'll kind of bring up like the identity thing, where it's not just like an Ojibwe person making stuff for like Mohawk people.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or telling or like a Haudenosaunee person speaking Anishinaabe stories.
Yeah.
You know, like things like that. Like
Yeah.
it's like, I don't know. And you see that a lot. You know, like even my auntie, who's like a university professor in Indigenous studies, she says like there's a lot of people that just, if you identify as Indigenous, is like, oh, teach this Anishinaabe class, but I'm Haudenosaunee. Oh, but we need somebody to fit this spot, and you are Indigenous. You know, like I finding the right person to tell the story is crucial. Yeah. You know, because only then it's like gonna be told properly. Because anybody could read the same paper, but the thing is, only some people could actually say it with heart and say it with like actual like genuine emotion and
like
all that.
Like you know it.
Yeah.
Even being like Indigenous, sometimes I feel like I don't want to be disrespectful to another Indigenous person, you know, because like there's Mohawk people and there's Ojibwe and stuff. I don't want to be disrespectful to like them if I'm doing art sometimes. Yeah. Like I don't know fully like their way, so like sometimes I feel like if I make this, am I disrespecting somebody like of like my community or other communities? Because I don't want to do that, but I like it's kind of like a lack of knowledge, but I need to seek out that. But that's how I feel sometimes. I don't know.
I can relate to that in a way, because it's like, because also you're worried about leaving people out or like excluding people. I feel that all the time, because I'm also like in like I have five nations that are like a part of like my like bloodline, and like that I'm very proud to be from. But like when I say it, like I was raised like super Anishinaabe, like that's like where I spent most of my time, and like that's like most of my family is like of Anishinaabe descent, so that's like including like Odawa, Ojibwe, and Potawatomi, and then like my other side is Oneida and Lenape. So like I don't want to like, it's like hard because you don't want to see, I don't like, for myself and my ancestors, I don't want to seem like Anishinaabe centric, but when I'm like I do really appreciate like all of my ancestors. And then I think about the Six Nations, because like Oneida, they're part of the Six Nations, and then like, you know what I mean, it's kind of like, it's even like tricky to navigate like yourself.
That was like another thing, like when I was mentioning the car thing, I don't want to be too stuck on the past, but yet I am, because I feel like only for me it's because I lack that bit of knowledge and I still want to learn it. But I'm still going though. I'm just going down the road, but I know I'm still missing little pieces. So when I'm approaching like a different piece, I know I'm gonna have to go back and ask. But that's just me though.
I feel like in society, like certain aspects, like people need to be like more forgiving, and I think that's like where we're going, like in a way, like where we're heading is like like people are gonna make mistakes, but we're always learning and we're always trying to better ourselves.
I think that's an important quality, not judging on everybody's failures, you know, but understand that they're trying.
Yeah.
You know, and because the only way to see improvements is through failure and through other people's failures, you know what I mean? So it's like if somebody like is incorrect about something, like talking to me about like my indigenous culture or something like that, I'll correct them. You know what I mean? I won't get angry. Some people might get angry at certain things, right?
Yeah.
But I don't think.
But I feel like that's just like like where they're at. Like when people react like that, it's like where they're at in their development.
Yeah.
Like where it's like, because sometimes when people like get like that, they're just like, it's almost like they're angry at themselves too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or that the question's been asked so many times, because I've had that a lot where it's like the same questions.
Yeah.
You know.
I mean, it's like as frustrating as it is to answer the question over and over and over again, it's obviously not being like answered. Like, you know what I mean? And people don't always hear the answer, and I feel like as like frustrating as that can be, I feel like it still has to be done. And it sucks if it's like you're the only person answering those questions.
Yeah.
But
Or
you know what I
seems
mean?
that.
Like,
Yeah.
I feel like if we can all relate to like hearing those questions over and over again, then there's probably a ton of other people who are experiencing that. And I think that just comes from a lack of knowledge.
Yeah.
But it's like right now, like we appreciate the work that our ancestors did, but also too, we're in that position where we're trying to get like the train moving towards like.
The older I get, the more the less, like, I understand, the less I know. Like, I don't know very much right now. You know, like, I thought I knew a lot about my culture until I went to school. You know, because I grew up on the reserve, right? And my dad being non-Indigenous, I never really knew that side of the family. I grew up on reserve, right? So I never really understood why we did certain things. I just would go to a powwow and be like, oh, hey, I go to Youre crafts, and be like, oh, this is cool, right? But I never understood the story until I went to school, learned about what my like residential schools and what my great grandparents went through and this and that, and truly understood what they went through, because they never talked about it ever, you know? So there's a lot of stories that were unsaid in my family, and it's like going to school and taking Indigenous knowledge classes and stuff like that, it really helped me understand why my family did certain things, why they didn't do certain things, you know, why I wasn't brought up in a certain atmosphere, you know?
I feel like all those aspects like influence a person's story. Like when you say like, I didn't do like these things, or like, but I feel like in those instances, like your family story is also your story.
Yeah.
And I feel like I resonate with that a lot, because like my mom and dad, like my dad grew up very non-traditional, and like my mom grew up very traditional, so it's like my parents had to do a lot of learning, which then though helped like me learn, because I felt like they did a lot of work for me, and like that really influenced like the spaces I had and like the spaces they brought me to.
Yeah.
I think that's also like a huge thing, like, is ensuring there's like space for Indigenous people to like have that freedom of expression.
Yeah.
Like to be themselves and to like have like there's like other people's stories told to them. And I think that's so cool, like now that we're doing like the art, like this art gallery.
Yeah.
Like that whole area downstairs is like gonna be a space for us to show other people like our stories. Because even though we may not be definitely saying like, I'm from a Tigmixing, or like my mom is Julia, like those are still embedded. In
your ancestors are embedded in you also, like in your stories. Like sometimes like I'll say things too and it'll just come out of me, you know? And my mom says like sometimes like your ancestors give you knowledge, you know what I mean? And you don't even know it, like you'll be just talking, then all of a sudden you'll just know. It feels like a moral feeling, you know what I mean? Where it's just like intuitive.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
It's especially around the things that you're like really passionate about. And you just get like right into it, and you're just like, oh, I just
like,
love this.
where did I learn that? You know what I mean? Sometimes when we sit there, it's like, I don't remember.
Blood memory.
Yeah. A big thing for me is reflecting on how my life would be different if none of that happened. If residential schools didn't happen. Like how would I have been brought up differently? You know, like the Mohawk language would have been spoken in the house, and I would have not had to go to school to learn Mohawk. I wouldn't have to put the time out and the effort. It would just be effortless. I would have been
Wouldn't
grown
it be
into
beautiful?
Yeah.
Like that looks like so just nice to me.
Yeah.
But now, like, it's not. But
It's like I feel like that's where I think about, like, I think about things a lot. But like when like people say like, well, it wasn't like that, so don't think about it. But it's like, well, you can still think about it, because maybe that'll help you like achieve like learning Mohawk or achieve learning the
Well, it can go back to that, right?
Yeah.
Because it's like what you said, your parents like had to relearn the culture, right? And then they taught you. That is where that's where that learning these traditions are important, not just for you, right? But it's important for your children and your children's children, you know what I mean? So it's like these stories continue, the language continues, and it's like it is spoken in the house. It's like, you know what I mean, it's talked about, not just in a setting where like with a camera or something like that. It's spoken about like as like before your kids going to sleep, you know what I mean? Telling these stories, so it's just like embedded in them. You know, and I think as a kid, I wish I had that more as a kid, because now I'm finding it a lot more challenging to relearn all this, you know, like learn all this when it's like I didn't have the option of having like family members speak it to me. And
I think it's becoming harder because like we're filling those positions now as people start passing. You know, we're in those spots now, so that's why I feel like it's a little bit more difficult. And
it goes fast too.
Yeah,
like
just because I know from my upbringing it was pretty difficult, and a lot of them didn't really seek out that knowledge, so I kind of lack that. But now that the little kids are coming to me, I gotta like try to give them something.
What we do now impacts the future.
Yes.
I think that's important, like teach the kids the stories, but also teach the kids how to be teachers themselves, how to properly tell the stories. You know what I mean? As if like they were going to be telling the story tomorrow. You know what I mean? And the thing is, even if you teach your children the stories, they'll teach their friends the stories, and it'll pass on through that, you know, because you don't know other kids, like they don't have that privilege of having parents that have the knowledge. You know? And I think that's why in communities it's important that, like, even though you're not blood related to some people, like you call people aunties, right? Because they teach you things, right? And that's what I find. I have a lot of people in my community that I call them my aunties, and they're just as close to me as any family member, but they're not blood related to me, right? But they tell me the stories of where I came from.
It's like, this is really sad, but also like really inspiring. It's like, listen to a story like you're never gonna hear it again. And like I feel like that's so important to remember, because it's like our knowledge and how we carry ourselves could, like, people's like it's like, I think it's like fancy, like, you know, when it's like more tragic to say like Indigenous people lost their way, where it's like not necessarily like people held on to it for the future. Like we wouldn't be here if it was lost. So I think like those kinds of things are like should be remembered, where it's like someone did this work for me, I have to pay it forward.
But I think it's also important to keep other people in check because people can claim that they know the stories, but they're not telling it properly. You know, and it's like I think that's how stories get like throughout the generations. If like the story's told improper, like it'll just pass down like that. You know, so I think it's important to have like a circle of people that all know the story, and make sure that we're all keeping each other in check, and make sure that we're telling the proper story, the ones that our ancestors wouldn't want us to be telling, you know? I think, because I know in my community, my mom said there's a lot of people that, especially Mohawk language, they're teaching it, but they don't know it, like actually, like they have elders correcting them all the time, you know what I mean? And they're like teaching the youth, you know what I mean? So like improper stuff.
And that's another thing too with language, right? Like sometimes you can be speaking something in another language and it means a lot more. There's a lot more behind it, but when you're actually speaking in a different language, it's not getting the full meaning behind it. Right?
It's true. And it's sometimes not the teacher's fault, it's just maybe their lack of knowledge. Right? And
because when you think about Indigenous knowledge, I think about like, because it's not particularly like, it might not apply to all nations, but like a lot of indigenous like languages are spoken in concepts, more so not direct translations. So there could be whole like meaning to it, and then like, but if you like say it, like it's, people be like, it's just like they simplify it to be like, this is what it means, but it's not technical, because there's so much like, in like, nations have such complex like creation stories or some like teachings that like don't necessarily like crisscross with other nations or aren't the same, but I feel like what makes them the same is like the connection to the land and like the respect for
and
like
the power
people.
that it brings to the people, right?
Yeah.
That, like what it brings to the people. I think a lot of these stories, they bring a lot of like they bring a lot of the values that we hold.
Yeah.
You know, like the value of community, you know, and not just being on your own, because the ones that are alone in the community those are the ones that are really, really struggling.
Yeah.
Right. And they never understand why, right? But it's like we are made to be like interpersonal, you know what I mean? We were made to like work together. And that's what when I work with kids, I tell them that. I was like, you have to like treat your friends like they're your like siblings, you know what I mean? You have to be really close with everybody, you know, because you never know what they're going to give you and what you could give them, you know, and it's really important to have that social ability, you know.
I think I just want my art to be like, to bring people joy or to bring like happiness and like bring their identity out and like just like kind of touch them, like, you know what I mean? Like have it mean something to someone.
Inspired.
Like not everyone has to like it, but as long as it like reaches somebody in a meaningful way, I feel like that means a lot. And like if I feel like my art really like reflects who I am as a person, and I think if people can identify with that too, that's like great.
Yeah.
I think that's like super awesome.
I think for me it's very similar. Like I seen how my music has impacted me, just like my own music, just like being able to write my story, you know, and sing my stories and like explain why I wrote it at this time period, right? And I could and even I have a song called Tidal Wave where I basically reflect on where I started from where I am now, and like how much like influence I got from my mentors and everything like that. And I'm like, wow, that's what I need to give, you know. Like I thought when I was a kid, I thought I wanted to be this big famous musician, but once I got older, I started realizing that it's not about that. It's about like inspiring kids enough to want to pick up a guitar, and then maybe one day like they'll come up to me and they'll say like, if I didn't have music, like I don't know where I would be, you know what I mean? I like music has helped me get out of a rut, you know what I mean, or help me do everything. Because for me, if I wasn't in music, I wouldn't be in school. 100%. That's
the funny thing is, like when I was younger, like I always hear like my uncles like, you're the youth, like you're the next people in line, like you guys got to remember that, like, but you're younger, you're just like, oh, whatever. But now that I'm like a little older and I'm starting to see like the little kids, I'm just like, oh my god, I see what he sees now, like I want them to be a little bit better. And like through my art, I feel like I want people to know that their presence is like very powerful, and like everybody should know that their presence is powerful. Just like our ancestors in our past, they were very powerful for us to be here. So everybody's presence is powerful. So like me, you, Emma.
They're stronger than they actually think they are. Because I know when I was a kid, I felt like I couldn't influence, you know. I felt like I didn't really have power in that sense to influence, you know. And then once I picked up music, I had people like complimenting me and saying like, oh, you're good at this, eh? Like you should pursue that, right? And then that's like, or like you're going somewhere with this, right? And that made me feel like I had a purpose. You know, and I think a lot of youth, it's hard finding that purpose, you know, because you end up dabbling with everything, right? Like, and that's why I tell my siblings, like, stay away from the video games, stay away from this and that, you know, because it's gonna hinder. Like, you might be good at the video games, but that's not gonna really support your growth in other, you know what I mean? Like, do things, do sports, do arts, you know what I mean? That's gonna really impact your future, you know?
When I was talking to my community, I was talking to high school students, and it was a award gala, and I had to do a speech. So what I told them was, it's always up to you to make those first steps to making any kind of change. You can have all the support in the world, but it always takes you to take that first step to make anything happen. So that's why I say, like, your presence is powerful. Don't ever forget that, because like once you take that step, you're making positive change for yourself, regardless of whoever's behind you, right?
I also think like that whole powerfulness is like, I remember, you know, like I have to reference like Standing Rock, but there's a lot of youth that were involved in that movement. And there was a talk here in Toronto, and they came, and it was really, it's not that I never heard it before, but like to hear it from another youth or like another young person, where they're like, and it had to do with their like, it's like their identity, like sexual identity, whereas like they're like, creator doesn't make any garbage, or like God doesn't make any garbage, like you're like, so don't think you're less than. And I think I always like to think about that, because I like sometimes I get real down on myself, but I'm like, no, like I'm here, and like I feel like no matter what it is, I can make a difference. And like I always feel like always do something that you love, and like you don't always have to like make money off it. If like even if it's just something like that brings you joy, like you should always do it.
Definitely.
Or makes a difference, right? That's the biggest thing. Like, you're never too. That's what I tell my siblings. You're never too young to like make a difference. Like, I've seen like kids like, what's that one, Greta?
Oh yeah, Greta Thunberg.
Like I think that's amazing that somebody that young could have such an impact on adults, grown people that have been in school, that have knowledge. You know, like I think that is so impactful, because that's coming from the heart. There's no way that she could have gone to school for 6 years and learned about this stuff. It's literally coming from just like within her, you know, and with the support that she has around her. So I think like youth have so much power, but the thing is they never utilize it, because like they have people telling us like, oh, you're just a kid, you're gonna grow up one day and like you'll be able to do this, you'll be able to do that. It's like, no, you could do it now. You know what I mean? You could really learn this stuff right now, and you could pursue your passions right now. You know what I mean? You're not too young. You don't have to wait. You know what I mean? Like that's one thing. I think that's the biggest thing for me. I always thought that there was going to be some miracle time. I was going to hit 30, or I was going to hit 20, and then there was going to be some magical thing where I was like, "You're an adult. You're able to do this. You're able
the
to
rainbow,
do this." Right? And I was just like, I'm literally in the same boat that I was when I was 18, 19. Right? At 23, there's like I'm in the same boat. You know that, and it's like the only difference is I'm realizing that like it's now or never to do this stuff, you know? Well,
I gotta shout out like Autumn Peltier. She's from Wukwamkong, and she's actually a young Indigenous youth doing that like same work that like Greta Thunberg's doing, and I think that's so awesome.
Because it does take work, right?
Yeah.
But I think that's where like passion and art all come into play. You know what I mean? Because sometimes kids like through art find that passion.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Through stories, they find that passion. They realize that, hey, this is wrong, or I'm really interested in this, and I really want to pursue it. You know, like. Yeah. And it's amazing what they could do. You know, and then once that clicks with them, that hey, I could do this. I've seen that in music. I've had students come and they're just like when I'm some of my students in Music for the Spirit, they were really like discouraged at first. Like they pick up a guitar and they'd be like, this is so foreign to me, like I don't want to do this. Like it looked like they were forced from their parents to be there, right? But then like after about 2 years of them doing this and me just like encouraging them, just saying like you could do this, like you just, and they hit a point where like every night they practice, right? We were able to get them a guitar so they could bring it home and practice, and like it became like they come back every year and they're just so much better, and they're so much more passionate about it. And I see that passion because they're asking questions. They're like, how do you do this? How do you do this? I love this song that you do. Can you do this, right? Almost like they could see themselves in my shoes as a musician. And that feels really good because like that's exactly what I wanted to do. It's not just what I taught them initially, it's I wanted to spark that passion, you know, and that I think through art you could do that, like, and you see it, you know what I mean? Because like working with youth, sometimes it can be hard because you have to get past that barrier of them thinking that they can't do it. You know what I mean? Because they put themselves down a lot, right? But once they realize that they're stronger than they think they are, then like the wheel really starts rolling, right? And then we see that passion, we see that that talent come out, you know?
Side note, Tidal Wave by James is actually one of my favorite songs.